the spiritual seeker, the archetype of the new seeker who revealed itself when I did my lunar channeling yesterday, actually. So I'd like you, as you are tuning into what that means for you, is the new seeker with this new moon in Sagittarius. And also perhaps keeping in mind the intention, the idea behind our call today. Why can't healers and sensitive people, why can't empaths have a normal life, quote unquote normal? And tying these two ideas together, what is the path of the seeker? What is the new vision of the seeker, the new archetype? And what is your normal? What are you seeking in your life? How can you access these energies of this new moon, this potent medicine that we're receiving today, to support you in your journey, support you in your intentions, as you come into balance with what is your equilibrium, what is your frequency, what is your normal? Good. Let's let this sink in with our breath. Deep breath in and out. Welcome, welcome. Yay. Hello.
Hi. I'm hoping that my internet stays stable.
Yes, let's set an intention for that.
We're asking the creatures of the Wi-Fi. Hold us steady.
Yes.
Yeah, there's been some rain here, so that seems to affect the conditions. So hopefully I'll stay stable for you guys.
Yeah.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Kat. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Pretty good. You know, we were having we had a little quick chat yesterday, you know, just to tune in and what's coming up, what's coming up, and you know, what are we talking about? And I don't even know how we hit. Oh, but you were telling a story, I think, of being at your brother's house. And we sort of hit on this idea around, which I hear all the time from healers, sensitives, empaths, the so on, about this, you know, leading a normal life. And as people are awakening and finding their gifts, finding their talents, following a path that is authentic, that there is often a lot of internal anxiety, pressure, shame, fear, doubt, all of these really heightened emotions that come up around a place in the world and living in this reality, in this world, and how to navigate that aspect of being in possession of gifts that create heightened sensitivity, heightened awareness, heightened emotions, and also being able to, how do I navigate family, friends, cities, driving environments, and home situations.
Yeah, definitely. And that's yeah, the story that you're referencing, it's been really interesting. This is the longest lately that I've been out of what I would call my frequency for a really long time. And it's almost a rude awakening in many ways of you know, going through a lot of initiatory experiences years ago about, oh, it's hard being human, and why can't I have a normal life? Again, I love, yeah, the normal life. Years ago, I was really in the thick of that, and now, you know, I'm pretty grounded and established in my work and in my purpose, and so then to be whisked over to my brother's house for the last week. You know, I've been house and dog sitting, and I was staying there while they were gone. And to be, you know, and I love my brother and his fiance and their dog. They're wonderful and, you know, very sensitive people in and of themselves and compassionate people, but they're not in my frequency. And so I've been sleeping in their guest room and, you know, just around their home space. And you know, they have what I would call a little bit more of a traditional life in that they are not pursuing the shamanic path. And you know, they're great. They're doing their own healing work in other ways. And yet I was dunked into a normal life for the last week, and it was very disorienting to my system. I've done such a great job over the last several years of, okay, I've got, you know, my space perfect for my vibration and all my stones and my sacred tools and my candles and my organic natural essential oils and no chemical stuff in my house. And then I'm over like, and you know, all my organic food and like raw veggie stuff. And then I hop over to their place and, oh yeah, they've got, you know, whatever kind of dish soap and, you know, shampoo and whatever. And it smells like, oh, they cleaned the floor with something that wasn't, you know, hippy dippy soap. Right. And so it's, I feel as though it's been a really interesting reminder of what was that period of adjustment like for me years ago when I was coming into the fresh awareness, like the really clear awareness of my work and working to make my space and make my environment fit my frequency. And I think that's, so it's like I got, you know, dunked back to like 10 years. Yeah. Nice refresher. And yeah, I absolutely hear you. I have a lot of people come to me with those questions too. So.
And I think that especially when we're looking at right now, we're in the holiday season. So people are, you know, traveling back home, maybe going back to the Midwest or somewhere else, and their family is the same as they have always been. They're just the same, that frequency. And and even if they're conscious, right, they're maybe at just this different level. People are evolving so quickly, then they go back home and they're like, oh wow, this is intense. It's almost overwhelming sometimes to you know, kind of, we build our little bubble, and then when we're thrust back into our family of origin, we not only have all of our triggers and our woundings from our childhood that get to come up, but we have this like this, you know, being out of balance with, you know, maybe having a family that like leaves the TV on all the time.
Oh God.
Watch TV and you know, so many years you haven't had a TV and they've just got the TV. It's just like that's the way they live. There's the TV's on all the time and there's commercials and you're like, wow, when's the last time I actually sat and saw 5 commercials at one time? And having to kind of readjust based on, you know, how the environment that we're being put in, or even, you know, sometimes it's like even going on vacation sometimes can feel kind of intense, stressful.
Yeah. Yeah. So why can't healers and empaths have a normal life? That's
Because
the big question.
we hear it all the time. I hear it from so many people. I actually posted not knowing we were going to talk about this, because we were talking about this because it's what's coming up for both of us.
Right.
I posted a previous article I'd written about your friends and family as you become conscious, and about how much we want to be continually loved, supported, and, you know, kind of evolving within the system that we have with our friends and family. And then we rise in consciousness and awareness, and it doesn't fit, and it becomes really uncomfortable because we don't want to lose. We don't want to lose what we had before. We don't want to lose what the feelings that we had before. And I think that there's a lot of pieces kind of underneath this concept around the normal life and those on the path. How do we have that?
Right. Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, talking to people, you know, people who are, sometimes are people who've had families, and they have a, a husband or a wife, they have children, and they've sort of been kind of moving along this certain path, and then all of a sudden they awaken further and further and further, and being able to navigate that piece, and sort of how do you keep those pieces together,
Or not.
or not, how do
Yeah.
you consciously dissolve those things so that it's
Again, or not.
right.
Yeah, because not everyone will consciously step into how do we have a, a peaceful end to this partnership, because there's that whole, I have a lot of compassion for imagining it from the other side too. Like, imagine your spouse is going through what could very easily look like a psychotic break. If they're honestly, totally, like, shamanic awakening or spiritual awakening can very easily look like a psychotic break. And you love this person, you've been with this person for 10 years, 20 years, whatever, and all of a sudden they're not making any sense to you, and they're talking about things that are totally not in your realm of understanding, and you just want them to be who they were. You want to be with the person you married and the parent of your children, right? And there's this understanding, or there's this like lack of understanding of like, but I don't see where you're going, and I can't follow you, and that really hurts me because it feels like you're leaving me behind. And so then we have these feelings of bitterness. And whether this is your spouse, or our theoretical spouses here, or our parents, or our siblings, there's still, even though it might feel really, really painful, most of it is rooted in deep concern and love. And especially on the religious front, with if you have religious parents and you're practicing your witchcraft, and they don't want to see you go to hell, right?
Right.
Really, that's their motivation, is like, I don't want you to go to hell, and this is the best way that I know how to make sure that you don't go to hell. So I'm going to enforce my practice upon you, my dogma upon you, which ultimately creates tension and pain and drives a wedge farther and farther apart.
Right. Or even, there's a lot of concern from parents that if you follow a healer's path, I mean, we all know that it can be one of instability and uncertainty, and it's not a 9 to 5, it's not, doesn't have a 401k, it's not, it's not in the system where a lot of parents are really concerned that you have something that's solid and stable, so that I can, if I get sick and pass, like, I know you're taken care of. And moving on the path of the healer, that feels really kind of wobbly and uncertain to and often there is that period of deep introspection, having to learn about self, and maybe study modalities and tools that leaves you maybe not in the greatest financial position, because you are doing so much deep work on yourself that you have to break from whatever it is that you are being called to do to make money. And maybe they sent you to college, and you went to college to do something, and now you're like, no, I'm not going to do that because I'm going to go meditate and teach.
That's interesting. I had actually a lot of my kind of asking what is the normal while I was in college. And so what were the years? So I was in school from 2005 to 2009. And I began my Reiki training when I was 19 years old in 2006. And, so I was right in, like, kind of fairly close to the beginning of my career in university, my academic investigations, right? And I had been working with healing energies for years before that. So that wasn't a new component, but doing that kind of investigation, that kind of spiritual work and investigation in the midst of my earning my degree in biology, it was a really interesting juxtaposition of, I'm going to go take my science classes, my cellular biology classes, my ecology, and my evolution, and animal physiology and behavior, and physics, and chemistry. And also, I am studying my Reiki symbols and contemplating the cosmos and how, how this energy is present in all of these cells that I'm studying and in the DNA that I'm looking at in my cell classes, and how this web of interconnection is present in the ecological systems that I'm looking at. And so for me, there was never any question of separation. It was easy to look at those spheres of my understanding and make that connection and say, okay, this does not exclude this by any means. They actually, fit really well together. And yet, whenever I would share any of those ideas with my peers, I was shut down so hard, like so hard, which looking back on it now, I find really incredible, because isn't university supposed to be a time of open-minded exploration of new ideas? Supposed to be, right? And, isn't that like, right, academia, I know you're laughing, right, it's, yeah. But academia and especially science, I think about the science, the principles of scientific investigation. You have your question. What is this question that I want to answer? And then you don't fit the data to the question. You do the research to find the data to answer the question, yes or no. And yet I found so much of, whenever I would tell my classmates about Reiki and suggest the idea, this was 10 years ago, suggest the possibility that energy medicine might have a role to play in the modern medical community, bam, walls up, shut down, totally alienated, really super uncomfortable for me as I'm trying to bridge the gap. And so, having been in that very dogmatic, it's so interesting how science is so dogmatic in and of itself,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, it's been kind of pulled apart so much. But then I feel like it is coming back together, as there's more and more research. The research really does support that science and spirit aren't separate.
Yeah.
And
Yay, quantum physics.
Yeah,
They're finally figuring it out.
They're figuring it out. They're figuring it out. They're figuring it out. And the more research that's done, really the better. And, I think that we're, I was looking at how all of those pieces, that normal life that we have, what I find is that the normal life that we had maybe before our spiritual awakening, or before we discovered some of these interests or things about ourselves, that it always is deeply connected. Like, our soul journey really is so ingenious that it is deeply connected. And it's almost like there's this piece that was, I didn't want to distract you with all of this stuff. I wanted you to actually learn this other stuff first, because this is part of the path.
Mm-hmm.
And I know in my journey, I would hear often, I would be like, am I supposed to do this? Yes, you're supposed to do this. This is not, like, it's like, this is part of the path. This is not the thing. This is not the end. This is not where you're supposed to end up, but this is part of the path. Do this.
What are you referring to when you say do this? Or are you referring to like more human normal life things, or like your spiritual pursuits?
Yeah, I mean, when I was having a really intense spiritual awakening, and I was really in it, and I had a friend who showed up and was in deep encouragement of me going to New York and studying with a master structural body worker. I had no interest in studying structural body work. I had no interest really, and I mean, a little bit of interest, but I knew that I was a healer. I knew that I had received that message, and I was trying to sort that out, what that meant, and working through my stuff energetically, and learning things and working on stuff. But then this sort of felt almost like a little bit out of left field. I was like, well, is this really what I'm supposed to do? Because I don't want to be I have a massage license and so on and so forth, but that wasn't what I thought that I knew that it wasn't what I was supposed to be doing in the end as a healer, but it
Yeah.
has massively informed the healing work that I do. It has in incredibly informed the healing work that I do in such a powerful, grounded, intense way that I wouldn't do the work that I do in the way that I do it without that education.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was, I know that was a really strong message of, this is not the end, but this is part of the path. You must go do this.
Hmm.
Okay, surrender, I'm going.
Yes, and that's a really wonderful example of what is it about the normal life that wouldn't be okay in, right? So I keep coming back to like, okay, well, why can't we as empaths and healers and this type of people have a normal life? Linear trajectory is huge in the traditional path. It's like, okay, you go to school, maybe you go to school and then you get a job in your field and you do the relationship thing and then you do the like pursue the training in that job for your field, right? And yet even that is shifting around so much, like, and that's not unique to healer types either. That's a function of what's going on in the economy and people switching careers all the time, and also this hugely educated workforce that can't be employed because there aren't enough jobs, and so then people are working not in their fields and becoming entrepreneurs, etc. So even that aspect of normal is changing around significantly. And yet what you just talked about with the follow this really strong support and pull to do something that who knows how it's going to benefit your career, who knows how it's going to benefit your work, that's not ultimately where you're going, and yet it shows up in such a strong way. I feel as though that is something that is perhaps a little bit more unique to the healer path, the empath path,
Yeah.
of following the guidance of like super strong signals, go do this thing, even if you're not really sure how or why, and then it ends up showing a little bit, showing up in a stronger way later. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I want to take this time to remind our people who are tuning in, do please feel free to chat in with questions, comments. I mean, I know that we all have our experiences with what is the normal life and why or why can't I have that, or how am I integrating that? What is my normal? So as always, feel free to share your thoughts.
So I was listening to a course on mediumship, and one of the pieces in the last class, that kind of hit me, because this has hit me so many times throughout my path, was that if you are going, it was, he said, right, if you're going to be a medium, if you're going to be this channel of healing, and you're working with the spiritual realms, we're working with these guides that are helping you do this deep healing work, you can't live a normal life.
Mm-hmm.
That living in cities will be too hard for you, because you have to remain open and in order to do this work. And if you're open in the midst of an environment that is dense and penetrated with lots of maybe darker energies, or um, you know people that are just having a hard time, electrical signals, these kinds of things, that you will have a harder time. And so after that I was just like, because I've been in that experience of trying to balance that. When I had my initial very intense awakening, I was living in downtown Los Angeles in a loft, and I became so super sensitive that I did have such a hard time. I went from being able to, like, total Hollywood, be able to go out, party, and whatever, to really having a hard time with sound and music, with crowds of people, with my gifts. I didn't have control of my channel, so my gifts would turn on in a crowd. I would start, like, feeling people, or I would get so activated by a tone that would happen in a, you know, a performance that I would have, like, my system would all freak out and I'd have to go outside and take my shoes off in Los Angeles. Like, you know, so um I I really did escape to, I became really sensitive to electricity and Wi-Fi and those things. I really did escape to the Northwest to learn my next piece around even deeper grounding, even deeper self-care and self-nurturance, and um, that creation of space and calling in spaces that were going to support me on my path. And, you know, ended up in a house, in a room where I was built into a hill, and I was completely just surrounded by green, and I was really held within this sort of womb container of healing. And and again, realizing how guided that I was. And, you know, for me personally, I've been in this space of, in contemplation of moving back to Los Angeles, and that has brought up so much fear and worry and doubt about my own, you know, ability to handle that frequency.
Yeah.
And so I've, you know, been in this sort of flip-flop of you know, I'm not the same that I was then. I'm so much more grounded. I have control of my channel. I am way more powerful. I understand energy and frequency. I know how to create space that's safe.
You have more tools and practices
I'm
for supporting your work. Yeah.
yeah, I have I have all that. I'm way more powerful now, right? I have a lot more power. And also the looking at how, as sensitives, as empaths, as healers, we can't all just escape to the forest and live in our little communes and love each other and you know, be in the frequency maybe that we desire the most. That we are called to infiltrate society and infiltrate the, you like, you know, the, like, we are these warriors of light. And, you know, I really stand in that I am a warrior of light. And a warrior of light does not, you know, I mean, you know, warriors want to sometimes stay home and like tend the garden, but at some point they're like, I got to get back on the battlefield.
Right. Warriors don't go hide in the woods. Right.
You know, and
as much as we might want to.
As much as we might want to, like, you want to stay home and be with your family and tend the garden and stuff like that, but the battle is raging over the next hill. And how do you, you know, how do you stop yourself if there is some sort of soul calling that maybe you need to be in that frequency in order to help to upgrade that system, to clear the space, to whatever. And, you know, what it takes to do that, what it takes to be that in that place.
It takes a lot to do that. And this is where I really like the term edge walker, right? So we, you know, as warriors of the light, as healers who have committed ourselves, I mean, you and I especially, and of course there is a spectrum. Not everyone's work is to do that. Not everyone is a spiritual warrior, and that's okay. There are people who it is their purpose to go be off in the woods and create the sanctuary space to, you know, to offer to people who need to go retreat into the sanctuary of that forest womb space. And so then, yeah, they hang out in the woods all day. That's great and wonderful, and that is deeply needed. And yet for many of us who are choosing to say, okay, well, here's my work, here's my container, here are my gifts, and I do still need to interact with the normal world. I'm not going to have a normal life because it is right. No, seriously, it's so disruptive to the system. Like this whole, you know, being at my brother's house for a week, like I couldn't work on anybody, basically. I worked on one person that whole week, and it was my friend who was going into labor. So it was kind of like, okay, this is time sensitive. Let's do it. And I did a quick tune up on her and the baby, and it went, you know, it was great. But other than that, I couldn't take any appointments. I felt so ungrounded from my frequency. And I would go back to my house and take a nap in my own bed and feel amazing, and my headache would go away. And I was like, this is amazing. I can do my work again. And then I'd go back over there and spend a few hours, and all of a sudden it's just, so it was an act of service and love to go hang out with my brother's dog and love him deeply. And also deep reminder of, in order to do this work, in order to be a successful edge walker, I need my home and roots. And I know that that's a really strong component for many of these spiritual warriors, is like, we need the sanctuary in order to be able to go out in the world and do the work that we do and speak in front of hundreds of people and do healing sessions in the midst of a crowded room, because sometimes that happens. You have to be resourced in your roots. You have to have your boundaries. You have to know what's going on around you so that you can have the shields up, not the walls up, not, like complete exclusion, but, it's a semi-permeable membrane, right?
Yeah. And, to accept, love, and appreciate ourselves for who we are and what we are. To be like, okay, you know what? A little more sensitive than your average. It's like, especially out there on the dating scene or whatever, and we go on dates with normal people and look at you with this, what you do, what, and then what, and it's like, just to love and appreciate ourselves for who we are and what we are, and to honor what it is that we need, and not use it as an excuse to be a victim or to, be in that kind of frequency, but to honor what it is that we need. That, I need a home. Like, I don't even know if I need to know exactly where that is, but for me, I need a home. And I have found over time, I really like to work from my home. Like, I don't really like having to go in and share space and kind of have all my tools and my frequency needing to re-up it all the time.
Yeah.
In multiple places. Like, I like my temple space to be where I live, and to be constantly pumping the energy into a place, into a container, so that I can more easily access what I need to access when I go into my work.
Yeah. Same. You and I are very similar in that way. Also, me having my home sanctuary that fortunately does accommodate my healing work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So within that, like, what are the other tools and things that we can be? Oh, there is one other thing before we were talking about tools. Like, I want to also, like, just tune in, tap into one thing that I have witnessed and within myself. I know that it's come up for you. I know that it's come up for a lot of different healers, is this, like, past life frequency on this story that seems to be in the system often, of, if I am this powerful healer, shaman, mystic, witch, whatever the name, priest, whatever the name is that there is attached to it, I will be X. I will be excommunicated. I will be cast out of the village. I will have to live on the edge of the village. I will never have a partner. I will always be alone.
Yeah.
That is a really deep frequency that seems to live within our, like, sort of magic lineage, that a lot of us hold that, and it doesn't, when we say it out loud, it's like, well, it doesn't really make sense, but it feels true.
Absolutely. That's a huge one. I'm really glad you brought that up. And I know that both you and I have done a lot of work around that, and perhaps are still working through it to a certain extent. I just recently in May kind of had a really big kick in the butt in terms of, if I am a shaman, it means I have to live on the outskirts of the village. That was my big, and I don't deserve to be paid.
That was mine too. I have to live on the outskirts of the village, and people will just, like, bring me, trades for rice, and
yeah,
I'll never be alone.
And Right. And you'll never be part of the community because people will be kind of afraid of you. Right. So this is deeply ancestral stuff. Absolutely. Like, soul ancestry. And I remember I was attending an event, actually the event I mentioned last time that I'm going to be speaking at this May. I was attending it last May, and there was this really wonderful exercise where that thought had never been perfectly crystallized in my mind before. And then as soon as it crystallized, I was able to look at it really clearly and realize, like, okay, this is deeply real, even though it's not in my lived experience right now in this body, in this lifetime. It is part of my total lived experience. And so how can I restructure myself, restructure my beliefs in order to be alignment with, I get to live in the village if I want to, but I probably don't want to, because of aforementioned reasons about, we need a little bit, I want to live on the edge of the village. I want that. Not, right. And so, but it's from a place of, I desire that and I need that, rather than I have to do that because I'm not accepted in my community. And so, there was definitely some working through that. And I know that the whole community acceptance thing is another really huge facet of this. And we've talked about this, I think, in every talk over the last few weeks, because it is so big and because people are always looking for, who is my tribe? Who are my people? Who understands me? And fortunately, with technology as it is, global community is becoming so much easier to obtain. And so you can join groups online, you can join meetups, you can find people. It's more just a matter of, okay, now everyone's coming out of the woodwork. It is safe to reveal ourselves, or it is getting safer and safer to reveal ourselves without fear of being torched, right? Because that was real too. Oh, if I reveal myself, I'm going to be executed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's some of the frequency that a lot of us are tuning into when we go normal life.
Yep.
Normal life.
Right.
Erin is saying that she's in acupuncture school in Oakland, and how challenging that is, because like with grounding and shielding, it's just really draining after the clinic, because it's just, she's like, there is zero energetic hygiene, right? Everybody's stuff, their density is in the air, and I clear the personal room for healing, but I still feel drained the next day.
Yeah.
And, it is true when we're around people who are really unconscious as to their energy and their energy system, and they're kind of just spewing their stuff all over the place all the time, and not really in understanding. It can be super challenging to hold our our line, our frequency, and to know like what's ours and what's not ours. And
that's also where feeling drained the next day, at the end of the day and the next day, that's where you're looking at, okay, where is the energy coming from that you're using to put into your boundaries and your protection. And this is something that I had to learn as part of my Reiki practice, because if you're not tuned into the universal life force energy, you're using your own personal energy, which is going to exhaust you and deplete you. So it's important that you are resourced and that you're drawing that energy not from yourself, but from source. And I know that that's a lot, that little click, that subtle shift in awareness and, okay, how am I resourcing myself, is something that a lot of healers, I would say most healers, go through. Instead of being depleted, okay, how can I be full? And then use what is overflowing from myself, use that to protect myself and clear myself and ground myself. And take such impeccable care of your own container that it's like, if the cup is constantly overflowing with this life force energy, you can't put anything bad in it. You just can't. There's no room.
mm-hmm. Well,
yeah.
Those of us who who have to work through this piece and have to figure this out, that it's like powerful. It's like graduate school. It's like the powerful training, because in that you have to figure out so much stuff that is supportive, help, grounding, protective, like you have to figure out so much stuff about your own system, and you learn so much when you have a challenge like that might feel like, why me, why this, why did I choose this, why is this what I chose to do?
Mm-hmm.
And like beyond what we can comprehend in the moment, the wealth of information, knowledge, and transmission that's coming through, that's going to be in service to the world and in
Mm-hmm.
service to the people, because people need serious help out there. Their energy systems are really broken. And so we need people who don't have the easiest time, because not having an easy time really makes you figure some shit out.
Yeah.
So just like, there's so much honor for all of us, for all of the people who don't have an easy time at this and really have to work at figuring out their system and what to do that supports them
Yeah.
in order to be that for others as they come through.
Right. Yeah. So Erin, thank you for chiming in, and thank you for sharing your work with the world.
Yeah.
Again, I'm sure you're probably aware of some really good self-care practices. If not, please feel free to contact us both collectively or individually. You can go through the Facebook page if you want some more support with that. But I would say, self-care is the root of all care. If the more, like I said, right, self-care is the root of all care. Like I said, the more your cup is overflowing, the easier it will be for you to not be depleted. So rather than, this is something I like to reframe for my Reiki students when they're asking, okay, well, what about clearing my office or clearing my space, like professional space, where there are a lot of energies of other people, and I feel like I have to constantly do maintenance on myself in order to be okay, or like I have to constantly do maintenance on the space in order to be okay there. And I say, do less maintenance on the space and do more maintenance on yourself. And don't even think of it as maintenance. Think of it as, again, like, it's not like you're fixing anything. It's that you are creating this wellspring of life force, of health, and of well-being that, when that is going strong, you will clear the room simply by your presence in the room.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's I tell this to my Reiki masters. I'm like, you walk into the room and the room is clear because you are in it, because you are radiating that light. And that comes from deep devotion to your personal practice and less attention on the clear all the space. And I totally hear you. It's, I love that term, energetic hygiene. I've never heard that before, but you're totally right. And sometimes we do have a lot to work through of other people's stuff. So, keep at it and let us know how we can support you.
And what else, Michelle? Like, what other tools do you?
Well, I feel called to jump to some interpersonal dynamic stuff, because you mentioned relationship briefly, and I know that's something that, relationships, that's like the healer having successful relationship is a big thing for a lot of people.
A lot of people report that.
Exactly. And relationship, in terms of partnership, but also in terms of community and family and parents and etc. And I'm at a really interesting point in that, actually, having spent like all of my previous partners have been, so this is, here, oh, thank you. You're welcome, Erin. Here we are, getting a little bit edgy and personal revealing here. One of my deep fears, one of my personal deep beliefs about my work is that if I am powerful, no one will love me. I am too powerful. I am too much. And I've actually had people tell me I am too much. I am too sensitive. I am too emotional. I am too in it, right? And so I've taken that as, oh, I need to be less. I need to make myself small in order to fit into a partnership. And I have done that for years. That has been one of my shadows to work through. One of my underworld initiations in this work is to really come into complete, and I'm a rock star single person, by the way. I'm so good at being single, and I am in my power, no problem, when I'm not in partnership. And then as soon as I start dating somebody, I just make myself small to fit in the partnership. And it's, I've been getting better and better about it, but I would say just recently, just very, very recently, I have come into rock solid understanding of that and taken no exceptions, suffered no fools. And I mean, this is a very new sort of thing, but I'm just starting to date somebody now who is a rock star, powerful magician in his own right. And I expressed some of that fear to him, and he says, for the record, I only am attracted to powerful women. So there's that. And
yeah, there's always someone out there, you know, there's always someone out there who can hold all of you.
Yeah.
And it takes a while to maybe find that person, and it can feel very lonely. It can feel very, you know, disempowering, but, you know, there is somebody out there for everybody's frequency. And I'm, you know, just in the realizations around, you know, around relationship and around, you know, if we can be the largest versions of ourselves within and be loved for that, that is like such an amazing gift that just cycles out into the world. And if that's not what you're receiving in the relationship, then that's definitely something to be looked at. You know, and you know, for me, I will say that one of my shadow pieces is actually using my power, my gifts, um my you know, my spiritual gifts as actually a way to distance myself and to push people away and to keep myself separate. So
how so? What does that look like?
like maybe not being like in, you know, in intimate you know, connection, not being as connected with the other person, like you know, like realizing that most people can't run the amount of energy through their system that I can. And then just being like sort of catapulting and leaving them behind, and not being like conscious and aware of their experience.
Yeah. Do you find that, you know, because I'm curious if you feel that that in any way relates to what I was saying about making yourself smaller to fit in that relationship. So do you feel like if you didn't catapult and leave them behind, you would be making yourself small?
Hmm. No, because I mean, I've been really looking at this for a while, and kind of
Yeah.
diving into that. And um hmm, yeah, I think it's a balance, you know. It's really me finding that balance of, um you know, and finding, you know, being with someone who's okay with the fact that I've, you know, energetically, you know, just kind of expand, um sometimes.
Yeah.
And and being okay with that, you know, being loved and accepted for that is really, I think, a powerful part of me, you know, being in the fullness of who I am.
Yeah, definitely. And that is, yeah, it's potent stuff. It is potent alchemy, you know, because especially as healers and empaths, when we are working in our own energy, our own frequencies, there's plenty to do already, right? I mean, you know, working through your own shadow and your own past life stuff and, you know, whatever else. And then as soon as you add another person into the mix, it's like, oh my gosh, you know, so it can be really overwhelming because you are a sensitive person. You are tapped into what's going on in their energy field, what's going on in their emotional body, what's going on in their past life stuff. And, oh, how can I help them? This is another thing that I think we as sensitive people experience a lot. And I know that this was a huge thing for me. where I wanted to heal or fix or help or save the men that I was dating.
This might be a total other like talk about.
This could be a whole thing in itself.
Whole other thing. We're running out of time, so I just want us to, we have about 5 minutes left to sort of wrap up what, what it is that we're saying here around this normal life that a lot of us have the experience of, and allowing yourself to have an experience of actually grieving over whatever concept that you have of what your life should have looked like or should look like, and in letting yourself have that grieving process, letting yourself go through that, and then really acknowledging, accepting, surrendering into being fully guided, protected, held by universal love and light, and the guides and the angels that are here to support this work, and our higher self that can see things that we can't see yet, and is kind of hopefully lovingly, gently pushing us along our path, and to really ask for help, for help and guidance. And when we're in a situation that we feel overwhelmed energetically, because of we're in school, we're at a job, we're living in an apartment complex, we're whatever that is, just really asking help, or help me upgrade my system so that this is not as much of an issue, or help me find a new place, like really calling out and asking for help and finding a place that is, envisioning yourself in a place that really does feel safe, secure, held, and finding all those tools, whether it is gritting your place out in crystals. And I do a lot of like resins and people. I went to dinner with somebody the other night and they're like, do you smoke? And I'm like, no, I don't smoke, but I've set a lot of stuff on fire. Whatever those pieces are that are supportive of the space that you are in, feeling more in resonation with, is that a word, resonation? I like
resonance. Yeah, I like it though. Yeah, especially because you were just talking about resins.
I'm living in resonation.
Yes.
So with the frequency that you're holding, and that can support additional upgrades of frequency, whatever for each individual person.
Yeah. And Erin is chiming in to say, I think many normal people are miserable. Normal is highly overrated. And yeah, that's why I was putting normal in quotation marks, because
do you really want to be normal? Like we have this sort of like Disney-esque idea, like almost like the Little Mermaid, right? We are like, I want to live on land and have legs and be normal. And the reality is, like, wouldn't you rather be a mermaid? I mean, the whole story of Little Mermaid is kind of a shit show. Like, let's just be mermaids and like love mer people.
Yeah. Right. And so, that's why I was asking at the very beginning of our talk is, what is your normal? Because even like the idea of normal is completely arbitrary and entirely subjective, right? And so we've been using sort of a traditional modern view of society version of normal, of not normal, right? Think about eons of human history. What is normal? Living on the land, connected to animal medicine, living like communal living, and connecting with your ancestors, being in the same place as your family. Like that is what humans have been doing for thousands and thousands of years. And it's only within the last,
living in tiny boxes all by ourselves.
Right. Last couple hundred years, really, that we've been having this isolated, fractured experience of enslavement to the corporate system. Right. So, that it's really interesting that is what we're seeing as the normal, right? Because, of the conditioning that makes it so. But what is your normal? What is your vision? What is your path?
Yeah. How do you build your new normal? Like the new normal is community and healing and love and high vibrational foods and,
Mhm.
art and creation and all of these pieces. How do we build these new normals? How do we build new normals maybe within the structures of society that already exist so that other people who are maybe just right on the edge will go, wait, this is an option? I, this is a thing. We can do this. And in that we can shift what is normal, what is normal so that people aren't miserable and
Yeah.
living in a system that they think is normal but is really highly abnormal, and they're not flourishing and thriving and living their soul's mission.
Right. Because they don't know they have any other options.
Right.
Really, that's a big thing. Or perhaps there's a big fear component, with pursuing anything that is inherently outside of the norm. There is enormous fear to be overcome.
There's
Like no matter who you are, and granted, like my super brief bullet point version of my awakening story, I was never shut down. I was never discouraged. I was never told that I was crazy. Like, yeah, I was told like, okay, I'm too sensitive, but that's about as bad as it got in terms of fear for my personal safety and the repression of my gifts. I was never repressed or threatened with medication or anything, and yet and having as supportive of a situation as pretty much anyone could want, but still working through enormous fear, again, of the societal fear of, there was one time in my life I was going through some really, really challenging, dark underworld stuff. And I was so terrified to see a counselor about it because I didn't want to be diagnosed as a schizophrenic and medicated and institutionalized. So I never sought counseling. And yet now, of course, there are all these amazing counselors out there who are pagan and shamans, and because there's much greater understanding in in the mental health community about spiritual awakening.
Mhm.
And we're right at 1, so shall we go ahead and wrap it up?
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Yeah,
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 this is a really amazing topic. I know yesterday when we said this is what we're going to talk about, we were both like a little like, ugh. It's kind of edgy because it hits so close to home
yeah.
as to the what we've I'll speak for myself, what I've had to go through and move through in this regard as to um wow, I will never have a normal life. And that's amazing, to be able to say, I will never have a normal life. Like, how actually really cool is that? How incredible is it that we live at a time in a place that we cannot have a normal life and we can build what we want and we can create a new normal and make it so yummy, juicy, and inviting that maybe we are an inspiration to everyone else.
Hmm. Yeah. Ah, to the new normal.
Yes, to the
Yes.
new normal. We are creating it.
Yeah, definitely. So, again, I'd like you to, if you did come up with an intention or some ideas for yourself at the beginning of the call, now would be a good time to revisit them, particularly in light of the beautiful new moon, or in the darkness, I should say, of the beautiful new moon in Sagittarius energies. We didn't really talk about that at all, but I did post my lunar channeling if you'd like to go listen to that. It's on my podcast page, joyofenergy.com/podcast. And that really does relate to what we're talking about today with what is the new vision of the seeker? What is the new archetype of the seeker? What is the new frontier?
Yeah,
And
who's
it's
gonna
not, yeah, it's not necessarily what you think it's going to be. So, in light of what is the new normal, what is your normal? How are you honoring your purpose and your journey? Maybe meditate with this lunar cycle, meditate with the intention that you set for yourself, and see what comes through for you.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
beautiful. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we're all working with that new that Sagittarian. All right, the seeker. How are we seeking? What are we seeking? Are we seeking what we don't really actually need?
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. As always, it is a pleasure and a joy. And Kat, thank you. It is, as always, a pleasure and a joy.
Absolutely. And we will be back next week. We don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but we're going to see what comes up this week. And yeah, I encourage everybody to check out Michelle's lunar channeling. She's really gifted, and they're amazing downloads of information.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we will see you next week. Thank you for tuning in. We're building our infrastructure here and our site and everything. So we just appreciate you and appreciate any comments, suggestions for topics, anything that you receive out of the talk, or anything you'd like us to cover.
Yeah, we love hearing from you. And also, we just put up a donate button for our Shaman Sister Sessions. So if you get something out of this and you feel inspired to support us, then we love that, and we're happy to offer our work. So please consider a donation, and we'll see you next week. Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.